Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Not too bad. How are you guys?
Going well.
Yeah, not bad. Any news? Boys are back. I see they're in their lounge room.
Any news?
They are.
Yes, we've been cutting grass that's too long in the paddocks, so it stops all the green grass coming through. So we've got hay fever eyes at the moment, which is quite nice.
That's exciting. And Swanny?
Yeah, one of the punishments of staying away for so long.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not getting a lot of sympathy from us.
I was going to say,
It's only one
that's
of
it.
them. It's only
We
one
had
of
to
them.
mow
I've
the
got
lawn.
blisters
Oh.
on my hands because I've had to work, all that stuff.
Oh, poor darling.
Yeah,
I did say that you'd gone you'd been in Noosa. Did you have a nice trip?
We did, yes.
Did you enjoy Noosa?
We ate too much and drank too much. Yeah, Noosa's lovely. It's just so easy. It's very swanky,
I've not been
though.
there for a long time.
It's very touristy and people dress a certain way and it's lovely to visit. I couldn't live there.
Does it involve white linen at all? Because if I wear a certain, a certain fabric, my husband will say, "What's going on here, Noosa?" So,
well, your husband is bang on.
I'm not partial to, but I wear it. White linen.
I love linen. Don't get me wrong. I love it.
Yeah.
But
Same here. I know what you mean, but it is a look. I know exactly what you mean.
I wear a lot of white linen in summer simply because it's comfortable, but sure, go ahead and judge people.
No, it's a bit more that I can't put my finger on. Sometimes I see things and
it's
I know
resort
exactly.
Wear. It's like
a particular
resort
look.
wear.
There's
so it's like
so
a cult.
much linen there. And then there's, all the guys are in there, the fitted shorts and the shirt and stuff. I mean, it's a good look, don't get me wrong, but everyone's doing it.
For our listeners, certainly anyone who's abroad, typically anywhere that's coastal is very, very, very ridiculously casual in some places. Certainly in Western Australia where I am, you're dressed up if you've got a pair of flip-flops, thongs on.
Yeah.
Noosa has always historically sort of even been, it's a smarter seaside resort, isn't it? It is the one that, a lot of East Coast people have always gone to.
It's incredibly chic.
So it's got better.
Yeah, and the food's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Great bars. It's got a lot going on.
We went to the Whit Sundays. We had like you charter a catamaran or whatever else. We did that just before COVID, so at the beginning of 2020. And the thing that I found after being in Western Australia, when we arrived in Queensland off the plane, it's like it's ready to go. It's built for tourism. It understands what a tourist wants and needs. Whereas over here, it's quite different. Here, it's about, they want you to work for it. You feel like you've got to be a pioneer to get anywhere that's really beautiful. Whereas there, it's like it was so easy. And I remember when we came back, we were like, Queensland is pretty awesome, really. Given that it's on our doorstep. Maybe I should book a trip to QLD.
You should. Something else that someone said to us is we were swimming in the ocean and it was beautiful. It wasn't cold by any stretch, particularly not for a Victorian. One of the people we're there with said if this was Manly, they would be blowing whistles and yelling at you to get between the flags and saying you can't do this and you can't do that, whereas Noosa, it was just do what you feel like.
Well, that's nice.
All right. Well, I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are...
Trial
by Wine. Oh.
What are we drinking?
Go on, Swanny. Shock the world.
Well, when I was telling my children, or one of my children, that I was doing Trial by Wine this afternoon, he goes, "You mean trial by sparkling water?" But I've actually got two cans on the go. I don't know why. I must have had one walking around with it. So I've got and unsurprisingly, I've got probably 2/3 of a sparkling water and a half a Coke Zero. So there you go.
Swanny
surprise. Swanny toucan. Yeah. What about you, Pear?
Yeah.
Something much better, I'm
we
sure.
We saw toucans
Boys,
in
what
the
are you
Amazon
on?
back in the day. We're on another Feather Top Rosé.
Whatever.
Oh, don't be like that.
Lovely.
They're really pretty. They're smaller than that they look
Oh,
like
no,
they
the
are
birds
on
are
the Fruit
lovely.
Loops packet.
Are they? I always
Are they
imagine
really?
they're bigger than a cockatoo.
Yeah, I always thought they were quite
Because their
big.
beaks are massive, aren't they?
Well, no, I don't think they are. Yeah, I think they're just disproportionately big beaks. They must have strong neck muscles to stop their head from falling forward all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm drinking, thanks for asking.
What are you drinking, darling?
Gerard
What are you
Bertrand
drinking?
Côte de Roses.
Rosé.
Well, sort of. It's a
rosé as
Grenache
well.
Syrah. So
It looks like I'd like it. It looks very pale. I like that.
very pale. It's from the Languedoc region of France. And on first sip, I thought, oh my God, this is sweet. But now I've had a few sips. It's not too bad. But it's a very pale, very pretty rosé. And that's the bottle. It's got
Is
a
it the
funny
same
little
colour as
top.
That's totally me. Yeah,
Or-
that's the kind of stuff I like.
Yeah,
It's
look.
just maybe a little bit more pale than
He's
yours. Very
white then.
similar, though. Very similar.
Yeah, very similar.
All right. Well, who's got a story for us?
I do. And I found a story that ticked a few boxes for me. So it's nothing too gory.
Celebrities?
But it's some interesting aspect of. Yes, absolutely. There is a celebrity in it.
Yeah.
There's a famous connection, and it's a very important connection. So it's not even. It's sort of like a.
Oh, I like
a
that.
little bit. When I found it, I was like, oh my goodness! I've been telling everybody about it all weekend because I think I don't know. It's just the kind of thing that really tickles my fancy. Having said that. Someone had to be murdered to get to that point.
There.
So I do have to say that up front. But
It's
anyway,
not
I'll
all
start
roses.
with it's not all
rosés,
roses.
as the case may be.
Someone had to lose their life for that to all come about. So the sources that I've used for today's crime are thecrimewire.com, 60 Minutes Australia, the LA Times, Netflix, and casefile.com. You'll notice, Clarkie, there's no Wikipedia.
Oh, it's
So
a hard
that's-
one to put
that's
together.
a hard
I did
one.
notice
So-
that. What
I
on
know.
earth?
I must have really liked the
How
story.
did you
to
pull
put
this
myself
together,
out there.
or haven't you?
I think you're going to find I haven't. And then so I've been sitting here trying to work out where do I want to start? How do I want to start? What do I want to tell them? So I think I just have to be a little bit sort of factual to start with until we get to the sort of more interesting part. But I'll sort of guide you through, I guess, the crime to start with. And then what plays out thereafter is where it becomes increasingly interesting, I think.
All the juicy
So
bits.
kind of unusual for me. Anyway, so the story begins with the death of 16-year-old Martha Puebla.
Oh, goodness.
She's sitting on the curb
16.
outside her Sun Valley home chatting with a friend. Sun Valley is sort of like one of those really outer suburbs of LA. And I do think that it has a large Hispanic community there. Anyway, she's sitting outside on the curb having a chat with one of her friends, and a man walks up from behind her and says to Martha, "Who are you?" And she says, "I'm Martha. You know me." The man then removes a 9mm handgun from his sweatshirt pocket and begins firing.
Jesus.
Yeah. The
What?
fatal shot was so close to her face that it actually left burn marks on her cheek. So it was, right up to her face,
Jesus.
making sure that's who.
Oh, point
what's your
blank,
name?
virtually.
Yeah, point blank.
Yeah.
Who are you? It's you. But it would also suggest that perhaps Martha recognised the
him.
person that shot her.
Well, when
Yeah.
she said, "You know who I am,"
Yeah,
That's
Martha.
a clue.
yeah,
Soon after, Martin Pinner was contacted while he was at home. Martin is an LAPD homicide detective, and he had actually previously visited the location where Martha was killed because he'd been there to talk to her about a teen that had been shot in a shooting 5 months earlier. Now, this is a little bit not too confusing, but the young man who'd been shot was a gentleman by the name of Christian Vargas. And Vargas had been dating a friend of Martha Puebla. They never mentioned the name of Martha's friend because I think she's in witness protection. At the time that Christian Vargas had been murdered, Vargas had been sitting in his car, and Vargas's girlfriend was talking to Martha Puebla to the window of her home. So you can imagine that. The boyfriend sat out in the car, his girlfriend's at Martha's house having a chat to her through the window. And as it turns out, whilst he was sitting in the car, shots rang out And it turned out that he had been murdered. So the girlfriend jumps inside Martha's window into the house, and unfortunately Christian Vargas was killed. But of course, those two girls then are considered witnesses to a crime. Yeah. So whilst they're
when we say they're witnesses, did they see who did the shooting?
Did they see anything? Or
well, I'll get on to that. So according to police, an early suspect in that crime. So this is not the crime that's happened to Arthur. This is the crime that precedes that. It's 5 months earlier. Okay. According to police, an early suspect in the crime was Jose Ledesma, a member of the Vineland Boys, a notorious gang responsible for drug sales in Sun Valley. The unnamed friend, so the girlfriend, who'd been dating Vargas, told detectives that Martha had identified Ledesma as the shooter who'd killed Vargas. But when police later questioned Martha, she told detectives that she merely was sort of speculating about his possible involvement. And then it says actually so this is from the LA Times, they're saying, in fact, Martha Puebla did not tell law enforcement many details about the crime at all. It kind of, her role in what she saw was kind of overplayed. She actually didn't come out and say, hey, that's who it was. So in fact, I don't think any of these kids would have done that. They were not that stupid, right?
Yeah.
They were not growing up in an environment where they were like, oh, yes, I know who it was. Let me tell you, please, let me.
Yeah. And if I tell the police,
so I think that was overstated and overcorrect. And in fact, I think it was totally overplayed by the police. And they used that to their advantage.
Right.
Oh.
So, when they went back and they're pulling all this apart, it's like Martha never actually put her hand up and sort of said, hey, I know who it is. That was not actually the case. But she was certainly tarred with that brush.
Are you suggesting that they were trying to get a confession or something by saying that?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that perhaps the way the police have billed what she has supposedly said might have been overstating that. That's all. That's what I'm saying at this point.
Maybe I'm suggesting that then.
Yeah, maybe. But probably more of it was made than what she ever said.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, authorities searched the home of Ledesma's family. Under his mattress, they found a loaded assault rifle and letters from other Vineland boys. And he was not home at the time the detectives were
Sorry, what year was
looking
this?
to the house. This is 2002.
And the boys are sending him letters?
It does seem a bit odd, doesn't it? Anyway. Whether they'd sent them or not, I don't know, but it says there were letters. There was certainly let's say there was communication.
Boy gang member.
Yeah.
It's funny because it doesn't go into any detail about the letters but it's so funny. It's like, what? I'm sure they were getting the post office and being posted, gang members posting things in the post office.
With love, XXX, hug, hug, hug.
What is important is when they did go to the house, they were told that Ledesma was hanging out with another gang member, and that gang member's name is Mario Catalan, and that is important.
Mm-hmm.
But in actual fact, they weren't just hanging out. Ledesma and Catalan had fled to Tijuana. But only 2 days after that home search, Mexican police responded to a domestic abuse call from someone who'd heard Mario Catalan and his girlfriend having an intoxicated fight. When the Mexican authorities questioned her, the girlfriend informed them that actually, she was happy to say it, these men are actually wanted in LA for murder. And so they actually took them. Ledesma and Catalan were soon extradited to LAPD's North Hollywood station.
What?
That hardly ever happens, does it? Yep.
It was quick.
That was quick. That's actually quite tidy, isn't it? Right.
Well, so my understanding is that hardly ever happens. Is that right?
Yeah.
Didn't you go to Mexico to escape extradition?
Totally. And let alone someone's girlfriend who'd probably be terrified. She goes, I think they're wanted. She actually does say, I think that they're wanted. So they ship them off. So back in LA, during an interrogation, Pina, who was one of the homicide detectives, told Ledesma that he had witnesses who would testify that Ledesma was responsible for Vargas's homicide. To back this claim, Pina displayed what is known as a six-pack. A six-pack is an array of mugshots where there's six, unsurprisingly.
I was totally going to say, I know what a six-pack is, Swanny.
Pack is, because I'm rocking one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just show you mine. Yeah.
Under this keg.
So this is important. On the six-pack that they've shown Ledesma's photo was circled. and initials MP were written below it. How about Martha Puebla?
Ah, of course.
Oh.
And scrawled under that, it said, "Those is the guy that shot my friend's boyfriend." And then scrawled alongside the margin was also a signature. So initials, a signature, and the line, "Those is the guy that shot my friend's boyfriend." So they are showing Ledesma this as proof that, you're going to get
See, here's
done. We've got a witness.
not just a witness, we're naming her to you.
Uh-huh.
Unbelievable.
That is so bad.
Unbelievable. When other detectives searched the car that Ledesma and Catalan had driven to Mexico, they found a handgun that would eventually be matched to Vargas's death, and also another killing that had taken place the same week, of which I have zero detail because I've guessed there were probably others as well. But anyway, the point being, the gun was found. So that, friends, absolutely. Can you believe it? So
surely they'll get off.
Yeah, and then come gunning for
do you know what? The
Martha.
story is not even about these people. This is not even the story.
What?
It's a little bit about the police work, though. So let's keep that in mind.
Right.
Yeah, this is important. After informing Catalan about the weapon's discovery, Pina then placed him and Ledesma in a holding cell with a hidden microphone in hopes the two suspects would confess something damning. At this point, Catalan told Ledesma the authorities had found the gun in the vehicle. The night after he heard about the gun, Ledesma used a payphone outside his cell. He called a friend. The conversation was a mix of Spanish and English. The recording of that call was used in sworn testimony, and what it ended up being was a kind of a badly translated, transcribe of what was said, and it was done by a company outside the LAPD. But then nothing is kind of ever really done with that. And we will park that piece of information because it becomes quite important. I don't know if you could think of what he might have been doing by calling somewhere after being shown.
That bitch Martha.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah.
I do wonder if there might be some things that could have been said.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Anyway, I'm not saying that it is one way or another.
She needs some grammar lessons.
Imagine why would that be important for the LAPD to have taken the time, energy, whatever else, to really understand what was being said on that phone call? That's how we start to understand why we end up with Martha being shot in point-blank range.
There's some very strong connections now, aren't there?
I'm going to tell you what they said in the phone call, although the police were not using it at that time, okay? They end up accessing it later. This is what was said, and forgive me, I'm not going to use any accents or anything. He starts off by saying, Cokester, that's his mate's name.
Cokester.
And the mate was a gentleman by the name of Javier Covarrubias, but his gang monkey was Cokester. Cokester, do you know that slut that lives there by my house? Her name starts with an M. I need her to disappear. She is dropping dimes. But keep a low profile, stay on your toes, homie, and don't get caught. Gee whiz, I wonder if there was anything in that that might have, I don't know, been useful for anybody if they had have known that. So again, Cokester, so we've got the guy's name, the slut that lives there by my house, so, someone who lives nearby, her name starts with M. I need her to disappear. She's dropping dimes, which apparently means revealing information. Keep a low profile. It actually says, but low pro, so keep a low profile. That's how it's been translated. Stay on your toes, homie, and don't get caught. I can't imagine why that would have been useful for anyone to have used. But the point is, they didn't.
I've seen Prisoner, and who was the screw that was listening to that phone call? I get they only got one end of it, but it's not like that's hard to understand, is it? Unless maybe they didn't speak
No. They don't
Spanish
have one
as
end
well.
of it. When you make a telephone call out of
In
a
jail,
prison,
they
they are
got the whole thing.
recorded. The whole thing.
Yes.
What I'm saying is in Prisoner, there's always a screw hanging around by the phones listening, which is clearly how it always works. So who's the screw in that prison who's hanging around, who hears that and goes, oh, there's nothing to hear in that? Because he's hearing it real time, or she's hearing it real time. That's a good opportunity to go, hang on a minute.
So Pina, who was one of the homicide detectives, Pina said in sworn testimony that the phone call's content remained unknown until January 2005. So that phone call must have happened late 2002, early 2003.
If they weren't tracking it at the time, they hadn't translated it, it just went under the radar.
When during preparation for Ledesma's trial for Christian Vargas's slaying. So it was more than 2 years after the recording was made. A Spanish-speaking LAPD officer listened to it. Could you imagine how that must have felt? Had they understood what was said on that call sooner, the detectives would have known about the plot to murder Martha, and they possibly could have foiled it given the time, but that was not used. So I now need you to sort of park that a little bit because we're going to move ahead in time. We're going to move to August of 2003. So what I've done is I've started in May 2003, May 12th, the murder of Martha Puebla. I've then taken you back to late 2002 to discuss the murder or the hit on Christian Vargas and then how we can see that that's led to Martha's murder. Now I'm going to take you to August in 2003. So on an early morning in August 2003, a gentleman by the name of Juan Catalan, Juan Catalan, I think I may have talked about a gentleman before called Mario Catalan.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So there is a connection there. Juan Catalan, he and his girlfriend and their daughter were on the way to his work. He worked in his father had like a mechanic, workshop, and he'd, worked there for kind of forever. And as they have pulled up into the parking lot, a swarm of LAPD officers unloaded from a van. So he's about to get out of the van and they've got him down the ground straight away. I've read and I've heard there were about 10 officers, and they were known as the SIS, which is a special investigation section, but it's more colloquially known as Death Squad. And it's a controversial 20-member LAPD team with an inflated budget and reputation known for shooting first, asking questions later. So there's
I was wondering if that's why they were Death Squad.
Yeah. Listen to this. The Death Squad was known to have as many as 45 suspects who never made it to bookings. So I presume that means that they are shot on or murdered on somewhere. Yeah, correct, yeah.
They resisted
Sounds
arrest.
like Victoria Police a few years back.
Quite a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah.
And New South Wales. I think New South Wales went through a bit of that too.
Yeah, they took over
I think a lot
after
of them
Victoria.
have,
Yeah. Got a bit trigger happy. Yep.
Why were they there and why was Juan now on the ground? They were accusing Juan Catalan, of being involved in the murder of Martha Puebla on May 12, 2003. Juan was immediately arrested, taken to jail, and placed in a cell. He continually denied he had anything to do with any killing. Taken to an interrogation room, LAPD Detective Martin Pinner, remember Martin? Mm-hmm. Oh, you don't remember Martin, you probably remember Pinner as a name. Martin Pinner showed him a sketch of the killer of Martha Puebla, lying that a witness identified him as the killer. Juan denied knowing anything and asked for a polygraph test, but the police denied him that request. So at this point, and what continues on, what they have in terms of evidence is they're saying they've got an eyewitness and they're saying that there was a sketch that had been made up. And the sketch was of a Latino man with facial hair.
Well, we've seen some pretty good sketches in the past.
Yeah. To be honest, it was a pretty good sketch, but I've seen, when they talk about the six-pack,
random
and they had like six-pack, it could have been any
one of them.
Yeah, It was, it didn't not look like him. I'm not saying it didn't. It did look like him, but also it looked like a lot of other people
when
too.
you said they lied, so where did the sketch come from? Was there a witness or just someone?
The sketch was real when they were saying that they had the line that a witness had identified him as the killer.
Oh, right,
that
okay.
Wasn't
right.
true.
So someone had just said, this is roughly what I think I saw. Not and by the way, that's Juan Catalan.
I think.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, Juan Catalan. Yeah. Juan is, while he's awaiting a court date, they actually sent him off to Supermax. Had Juan ever been in trouble before? Yeah, he had when he was much, much younger. So Mario Catalan is his brother, and Mario is bad news. He really is. But Juan, not so much. When Mario is his older brother, and when he was younger, he was involved in some petty crimes that related to his brother. He had been to jail when he was, younger, and he said, "I'd never want to go back again." So he was living a
straight and narrow life.
Straight and narrow life. Yeah. So to be sent to Supermax and maintaining his innocence was shocking because he knew that he would be potentially tried for, the death sentence because of a murder. Because they kept saying he murdered the 16-year-old girl Martha Puebla. Now, did he know Martha Puebla? Yes, he did. He did know Martha. And the reason he knew kind of Martha was because he had been in a courtroom when his brother had been a defendant in a crime and Martha had been a witness. And I don't think that that's a Christian Vargas crime. I think that might be something different. Another crime, yeah. So they had they
She's got-
had crossed paths. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
but
I
also
remember,
that sounds like she was dropping dimes a few times.
I think
yeah. Excellent use of the phrase dropping
She
dimes.
needs to pick those dimes up.
She needs to stitch those holes in her pocket.
Yeah, so he's in Supermax, being accused of murdering, an underage girl. He said, if people got their hands on me, I just knew that they wouldn't be bothering to ask whether or not I had actually done it. And they're not after the distinction of whether I did the crime or not. That's not how it works. So he said it was the scariest part of the whole thing was being in Supermax where he was waiting,
Trial.
to trial. Yeah. What was in his favour, it is kind of remarkable in the way, Juan remembered that his cousin worked for an attorney, like a really flash attorney who at one point had been on TV and he seemed to have like a really good success rate, and the cousin was always saying how amazing this guy was. So he reached out, and a gentleman by the name of an attorney called Todd Melnick met with Juan. Anyway, shortly after meeting him, he was like, it just didn't make sense. He said, I just couldn't believe that this kid was capable of, when I say kid, he wasn't a kid, but, this young man was a killer. I just didn't get it. And he said he was a father, always talking about his kids. He was so scared and so broken. I just didn't get that feeling. And he said, okay. So he said, I'm going to get you out of here. I'm going to take the case. So this is where I think it gets quite interesting, because when I've seen the footage of him being interrogated by the homicide detectives, and the homicide detectives are obviously the ones that were involved in Martha's case and Christian Vargas's case. They are Rodriguez and Pina. They are just, I can hear it in his voice that he is terrified, and that it's, he's like, you've got it wrong. You'll find out it was not me. I've had nothing to do with this. And every time they ask him a question or they tell him what he's done, he's like, no, that's not true. And like they're not listening to anything he says either. That they've already kind of made their mind up. It's just, and then they're showing him, as I said before, kind of, fake evidence, again, things circled, and it's just pushing people to a point to try and get a confession, but none of it was actually based on anything particularly factual. So this is where things get, this is where it sort of caught my eye, and I found it quite interesting. When he's initially arrested, he cannot get past the fact that they're saying he's murdered a young girl. He's like, no. So when they're mentioning dates, he said, I couldn't even get to the date. I wasn't thinking, where was I? I'm not thinking of alibis or whatever else. He's like, I couldn't get past the fact that someone was suggesting that I could be capable of killing someone. So he's not blurting out, this is where I was, whatever else. So he's been arrested, they've interrogated him, whatever else, and it's his girlfriend that comes forward and says, I knew that the date sounded familiar. She's like, that's near Mother's Day. And then she said, actually, I know where you were. You'd gone to the baseball. You were at Dodger Stadium. I know you were at Dodger Stadium. You were at you'd taken your daughter to the baseball. Juan's girlfriend, Alma, reminds Juan of this. And so then Todd Melnick starts on this sort of campaign to prove that
he wasn't there.
He was at this,
that he wasn't killing Martha, that
out.
he was at the baseball.
Yes.
Yeah.
On May 12th, 2003, Juan Catalan had taken his daughter and two friends to Dodger Stadium to see the LA Dodgers play. And he'd only got the tickets like the day before. There's someone else, they weren't his tickets, they were season ticket holder, some season ticket holder had given them to him. And he'd kind of presented them as, I've seen him talk about this, as a gift for his mum for Mother's Day, knowing full well she didn't want them. But he said, I kind of did this sort of show of, Mum, can I take you to the baseball?
Oh, well, I'll go anyway.
So she didn't want to go, but he did have his daughter with him. Todd Melnick approaches Dodger Stadium and tells them what he's looking for, and he starts going through all the footage that the stadium themselves have. And he's like, I'm not having any luck. He said, I could get to a point. He said, I can show you where they are at one point. He said, but it's too grainy as evidence of he and the daughter. And he said, I'd have to watch for a particular shot at a certain angle because I knew that they would pan around a certain way. So he'd spent days going through the footage that Dodger Stadium was able to provide and had something, but it was never going to be sort of enough.
Conclusive.
And televised?
It was, yep.
Broadcast,
Yep. But in talking to Juan, he's saying, like, radio, who can we talk to? Who else could prove that you were there? And they said they ended up contacting people, in Chicago and Hawaii and stuff that had been there. But everyone was like, I think so, but I'm not prepared to testify because I'm not 100% confident.
I don't want to get shot in the face.
I want to get involved in an LA gangland crime. Please, again, me.
Yeah.
So that was not an avenue that was sort of becoming fruitful for them. And then one says, look, there was something being filmed when I was there. He said, because at one point I sort of had been held back, but I don't know what it was. I just know that they were sort of near us at some point. You know, there was something
Netflix
going on.
documentary about Tiger King.
Wow.
Close.
So Ted Melnick heads back to
Jeez.
Dodger Stadium and says, is there any chance that you would have been filming something here? How would I go about finding it? And they said, well, come with us. And they have like a media department where they do certain things where things are filmed. And they said, we work heavily with the entertainment industry. So, we're really open to any approach. Let's have a look. And he said they got a calendar out. And he said they started working back. And he said, to be honest, it was mainly empty. And he said they get to the 12th of May and there's a scribe note saying, production. He said, look, it was a production company. I wouldn't have known who it was. It meant sort of nothing to me. He said, but clearly something had been filmed. And he thought, great, well, there you go. I might have another option at finding something with the footage that they've taken. Unbelievably, he calls, the production company number, and they answer the phone and someone says, good morning, HBO. So we are not talking about
not Netflix,
some little piss week world production. We're talking HBO. So he said, I was floored just by that. And he said, I don't even know who to speak to. He said, but I understand that there was something filmed at Dodger Stadium on the 12th of May, 2003.
Too early. Yeah.
2003, yeah. I'm a lawyer. I'm representing someone who could potentially
have been there, the and I need the evidence.
And I'm desperate. I know he was there. I've got some footage, but I'm just looking for anything else that can corroborate and show that he's there. So would I be able to access, your footage? And I've seen the interview with the guy who took the initial call, and he said, I thought this guy was nuts. He's like, look, mate, we haven't even created the episode. I haven't even told you to show yet. We haven't even created the episode yet. So, we're not going to let you have the footage. And he said, and then he said, look, come on, I'm telling you that someone's life. And they were like, well, let me go and ask. So the person that they go and ask is Larry David. It's for Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, right.
So Larry's like, yeah, sure, come on down. So what they do is Todd Melnick goes down to the production suites for Curb Your Enthusiasm in Santa Monica and says, I've got to save this young man's life. He's been at the baseball, but I need more proof that he was there. Can we go through everything you've got? And they start doing that. And they're 5 tapes in, and they finally see him. And what has happened is, I'll need to tell you the actual synopsis of the story of the episode because it's brilliant. But Larry David is seen walking back up, imagine if you're in the seat in the grandstand.
Yeah.
And what they had done was, because it's fee-paying people, they're not allowed to ask people to move or not move. They have to really work and they have to make it look as natural as possible. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they're holding people back and going, you can't walk down there or whatever else. But one of the showrunners was saying, my job was to kind of let the shot happen and say to people, look, I can't stop you, but could we just wait till that's kind of finished? And he said, sure enough, what you see is Larry David's bending down talking to one of the other characters in a particular place which is not where he's seated. He has to move across to go and have this chat with this other character. And then you see him come back up the stairs and there's no one on the stairs, and into frame walks Juan Catalan and his daughter. You see them, literally Larry David's walking up the stairs and you see them walk into the top of the shot.
What?
And then they turn side on. So then you get their total profile as they go to their seats.
Wow. And his daughter, just like you said.
Todd Melnick jumps out and goes, oh my God, it's him and it's her. It's not just him. They've walked back with their candy. They've been to the concession to get some popcorn or whatever. And it just, the way they've built it later, you can see this in this documentary called Long Shot. It is, they've built it up, and there's this moment, and you see Larry walking up, nothing's happening, and then this poor man just walks into the shot with his daughter, and I just oh my God, it was
just having a nice family day, and then the horror of going to a supermax prison. Jesus.
But it's not over yet, because that might not be enough. But I do want to tell you what the synopsis of this episode was, because I remember this episode and it's brilliant. There's about 4 different versions of it. There was one that I really liked that I wanted to read to you. Where is it? Because it's quite convoluted. Right. Did either of you ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm? Or do you at least know what the show is? Yeah.
Mum's a big fan.
So Larry David is the guy who is the writer for Seinfeld. Mm-hmm. And do you know who Larry David is, or do you think I'm just no, I know you do. I'm asking the boys now. You don't know who he is?
No.
Okay. So Larry, Oh, okay. So Larry David was the writer for Seinfeld. And then he had this other show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, which was massive, like through the, let's say early 2000s.
When did you move to the Valley, boys?
Never even heard of it. 2010?
2010.
Oh my God. I think you might actually like it.
You were living in civility at the time that this was on. You would find it funny, I'm sure.
I think you would.
Should that mean something?
But the show is about him, and he's just this absolute curmudgeon, like really,
Arsehole.
so un-Hollywood, but, he knows, there's quite often all the different comedians that are in there, and he's miserable.
I mean, to be
he's
fair,
a
I
misery.
didn't watch
He's always-
Seinfeld, so...
Okay.
Yeah, it's not really the same like that, but
very
it's about,
different to
well, I guess in
Seinfeld.
some, it's just about a guy who gets himself into shitty situations all the time. Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds like me.
Okay. So there's always, like, in each episode, there's all these interconnecting things that make his life, like he mucks it up himself. He's his own worst enemy. And then he always ends up, exposing himself in a way that it's embarrassing. And everybody around him just going, oh my God, how'd you do that? Or let that happen to yourself again. Okay, so I'm going to just let you read. I'm going to tell you what the episode was about and why he was at Dodger Stadium and who he was with and why it was shot the way it was, because it is interesting and important. Larry scrambles to find tickets to a very promising Dodgers game. Jeff and Larry, that's one of his mates, have checked everywhere and cannot find any tickets for sale. Larry finds that Marty's dad, that's another one of his friends, Leo, used to have season tickets to the Dodgers. He's subsequently died. Larry apologised to Marty about some other incident where they'd had a problem, and Marty still refuses to give away his dead father's baseball tickets, as he claims he's going to the game himself and that he's not going to give the second ticket to anyone, just someone. Finally, Cheryl, who is Larry's wife, manages to score 2 tickets and asks Larry to go to the game with Jeff. But before Larry can go, he has to take care of a few things. The duties include getting out of jury duty. Larry claims he claims to be partial to coloured people. That's the excuse he gives them to get out of, which becomes important later on, right? It becomes important later on. Larry claims to be partial to coloured people to get out of serving jury time and scoring some medicinal marijuana for his dad's glaucoma on the way. He manages to score some swag from a street dealer for $200. Then I can show this, but then there's a scene where he's sat in his car, trying to work out, he's got to get to Dodger Stadium, and he's looking down and seeing all the traffic. And he's like, how am I going to get there? I just need to be able to use the carpool lane. And it's at that point where he's, just sitting on a side road that a prostitute comes and puts her face and breasts into his car and says, hey, daddy, want to play mummy and daddy or whatever else? So Larry hires the prostitute to be a passenger in his car so he can use the carpool lane to get to the LA Dodgers game on time. The hooker says that she wants $1,000 because he needs it there for 5 hours for the duration of the game. And he's like, oh, no, don't be ridiculous, but I'm not going to pay you that. And she's like, I'm really good at blowjobs. And so the other, I'm worth it. And he's like, anyway, cut a long story short, his mate then pulls out at the last minute. So he takes her, the prostitute, into, and it turns out that she's a black woman, which again will be important later on. So she's this, really busty black woman with lots of attitude, and he's this, really dorky middle-aged guy, balding and whatever else. And they go and sit down together. And so that is all being filmed whilst Juan Catalan and his daughter are not in shot all the time.
Past, yeah.
Yes, and the thing, and the woman who's the actress who plays the hooker, she said, I didn't see one camera the whole time I was there, because the way it was done was they used a camera
Long
from
shots.
long shot to do it all, so that it didn't feel like there were real people around them. It had that real sort of legitimate kind of, felt genuine when you were watching that they were just 2 people who'd come into a Dodgers game. One of my favourite scenes is she goes, "You're embarrassed to be seen with me," and he's like, No, not at all. He goes, I'm just worried because I can see 2 people over there who are at a golf club that I want to become a member of, and I met with them yesterday. She goes, I'm going to get my titty out. And he goes, no. She goes, I got to get my titty out. You're embarrassing. And so then he's got his arm around her to try and calm her down. That is so brilliant. Then he spots his other mate whose dad had died, and the seat next to him's empty. And that's where it is important, because when he walks down to speak to him, it's that scene when he leaves the hooker. If he didn't go down there, they wouldn't have him going up and down, and that's where it becomes really important. Okay, so there's
The
now...
actress wasn't Janet Jackson, was it?
No, her name was Kim Whiteley, but I've seen her
Divine
interview.
Brown.
And like, she had some like Monisha kind of name. She was all this, black sassy attitude. It was just brilliant. She's like, I'm going to get my titty out. and like they're practically out anyway. And he's like, no.
Such a good
You don't want to be seen with me. Oh, God, it was good. At the game, Larry finds Marty sitting all by himself. And then he sees the guys who have interviewed him to be, members of this club that he wants to be part of. And he knows his application is a pending decision in 2 days. Anyway, he doesn't want to be seen. It's not going to look good with a prostitute. He goes to see Marty, begs, we say, why are you sitting alone? Why can't I sit with you? Marty's adamant he wants to save the seat in a memorial for his dead father. So he refuses Larry. Larry eventually has to go back to his seat and, of course, is seen by the managers as they're walking out. And he just looks at them and sort of goes, if you're looking for a good price blowjob, she's great, and they just discuss it and walk off. So it's probably a bit too much detail there, but anyway, that was where things ended in terms of why Larry David was there and why it was so important that this episode was absolutely pivotal in proving where he was. When they went back to the court, the woman who is she was like the gun, I forgot her name, something Silverman, I've forgotten her name. They called her the sniper because she'd never not won a murder trial. And she was really not having it. She was like, it's still not good enough. Let's have a look what time. And that they were able to look at the time on the footage, and it would say that it was 9 p.m. 9:09 to 9:15 was the time code that they've got on the footage that they've got of him. But the murder wasn't until 10:40. And it was at this point that Todd Melnick was like, oh my God, we're still not out of the woods yet. And he actually he'd been a reporter online for like sensational kind of crime stories at one point, and he'd covered O.J. Simpson. And he knew that one of the ways that they were able to track him at one point was the pinging of phone calls from the cell towers. Yep. And so very fortuitously, because they were saying to him, right, have you done anything? Did you use your credit card? Did you, because he said he bought some Dodgers play cards for his daughter, or trading cards, not play cards. And he said, no, I used cash. But very fortunately, his partner, Alma, had called him. So they were able to say that the earliest he could have left was a certain time, and he was still at Dodger Stadium in the car park, so he wouldn't have had time to get to the scene of the murder.
To get there, yeah.
God.
So, yeah. So, as he said, honestly, he said it was like winning the lottery for him. He said, because my life was gone. And he said, I've heard about people being exonerated, 20 years down the track. He said, all of that was where I was at. He said, I knew that I didn't do it. People who knew that I didn't, but it wasn't going to ever be enough. And the other people really wanted to put him away.
Isn't it interesting? Because, when we talk about where the burden of proof is, the defence are not supposed to have to prove that you're innocent. It's prosecution are supposed to prove that you're guilty. And in this situation, they didn't actually have enough evidence apart from a sketch that could have been any bearded Latino. Yeah. And that was it. They didn't have anything else.
It's crazy,
the
isn't
amount
it?
of detective work a defence has to do. Yeah, the lawyer, he doesn't even have a detective to do it. It's incredible.
There's actually a quote. There's footage that I've seen where one of the detectives actually says to him, he said, "I didn't do it," whatever else. He's like, "Well, you're going to have to prove that that you didn't, because you did. It was like you didn't. You absolutely did kill it. End of story. It's on you now to try and prove that you didn't." So what? So they went to court, and then the judge, just pulled the case, and then he actually, I don't know, I presume he sued the LAPD or whatever else, but he did get a payout of $320,000. But I don't think it's a quote from him. It might actually be a quote from Todd Melman, but I think it's really interesting. It's
Melman
not enough.
Melnick.
Melnick.
Okay.
Did I call him Ted or Todd? Todd Melnick.
Todd Melman.
And I might be misquoted, but I've read this somewhere in the stuff that I'd read. It's very true. It's not enough to be innocent. You also need to be lucky. And it's some of the things that come up in this in terms of themes that I've found interesting to me. Well, obviously the criminal justice system, which we can discuss, luck. And sometimes, luck is either on your side or not on your side. This massive kind of what if the footage wasn't there? What if, and this is one that comes up in the documentary and also a lot of the writing that I've read about, the articles, which is, What if he just had have watched the game from home? The wife says, no one would have cared if I'd said he was here. It wouldn't have been enough. What if it was just me and his mum who they live with and my daughter? No one would have cared about what we said. You needed to have footage because we would never have been enough. And he would still be, rotting in a jail somewhere.
Yep.
And then I also thought that there were some other interesting themes around family, cycle of
Violence,
reputation, gang life, all of those things. It touched on quite a few things that were quite interesting. But, I did want to just end by telling you what happened with Martha's murder.
Actual
and
murderer.
who the murderer was, and also what happened with the policeman. In 2008, the Vineland Boys, which were the gang that I mentioned at the outset, a gang member, Raul Rebeldo, was sentenced to life in the murder. Ledesma and Cokester, who is Covarrubias, who was the one who took the call from
love it.
lockup.
Yeah.
Cokester admitted their roles in Puebla's death and are serving life sentences. According to Associated Press, Los Angeles County prosecutor Beth Silverman, she was the one that was was nicknamed Sniper
Silverman,
because she had never lost her murder case. So she has since won awards. Like, she's the gun by all accounts. She's incredible at what she does, but she would have been a very terrifying opponent to be against because she didn't lose and she wasn't prepared to. When they were going through the process, she was confident that it was him. This is interesting, and I don't quite understand this. Martha Puebla's parents filed a lawsuit against the city because, well, you know why? Because they thought, well, once they heard that Spanish call, they could have prevented her death because they did not protect her, right? Not only did they not protect her, when they found out...
Arguably, they caused it.
And that was fake. When they showed the picture that had her initials and what the quote that she said and her signature, she didn't do that. They had done that. So they had created that.
But they wrote MP.
As well.
They could have
Correct,
written
that's what I'm saying.
any other initials that they wouldn't have connected.
So they totally set her up. But it said a federal jury did find that the two detectives were negligent over the photo ruse. However, jurors found that Puebla and her parents were 80% responsible for her death, and the detectives were 20% at fault. The family, I don't understand this, and this is from the LA Times. So that I don't know how else I can find more information on this. But then this is the bit that I really don't get. The family was awarded $1. Oh, fucking what?
What?
That is the...
You've got to be kidding.
That makes no sense. That just sounds like fuck off, doesn't it? I don't get that.
It's very insulting.
That's awful.
Beyond insulting. That is the ultimate insult.
How is it 80% their fault that
I
she
don't
got
understand
shot in
that.
the face?
I was questioning whether or not I even mentioned it because I don't have anything else. I can't find any other information on that. But there's this one random paragraph, but it was from the LA Times within a bigger article that was actually really interesting. But yeah, that makes zero sense to me. And so that is the story of the murder of Martha Puebla and the interesting journey that poor Juan Catalan took from being arrested and how he was able to be proven innocent by Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David.
Which is also very ironic given the nature of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I really wish you could watch this. There's a little bit which I won't show because we have time, but oh fuck, it's so fun. I want you to see the hooker. She's so sassy. I just love it. She's like, I'm gonna get my titty out. You see, I'll show you. You're embarrassed to be with me. Oh God, it's great.
I love it.
I love it.
Any thoughts on sentences? I have one.
Go on then.
Let it rip.
I'll just start with
What is
sort
it?
of, I suppose, one of the things that starts all of this is this violence, this driving up to someone and shooting them or walking up to someone and shooting them in the face. So I'm going to sentence this. Everyone who decides to perform a violent act against someone else, if you walk up to someone with a gun and you go to shoot them, the gun will misfire and blow up in your hand, but no one else will be hurt, just you.
Nice.
If you go to shoot someone into a car,
That is good.
again, the gun will blow up and maybe blow your own face off, but no one else is hurt.
I wanted to know how.
If
Wanted
you
to
go
know how
stab
badly
someone,
hurt. Is it equal to what you were going to do, or is it not quite that bad? Or is it worse?
Probably not quite that bad, so that you can be in quite a lot of pain and have to recover from it. And then when you get another murderous thought, it just happens again to you. You go to stab someone and somehow everything slips and you stab yourself in the gut. Just
escalating.
All of the violence is it just returns back on you and can't hurt anyone else.
Yeah. Is that in Goofy World in Trial by Wine World?
I was trying to think of it. It's like
I'm so unlucky.
I was thinking
it's again.
World.
Tom and Jerry world.
Anti-physics world.
Roadrunner world.
Yeah, some kind of
Wile E. Coyote world.
Some kind of where all the physics go wrong and it just is back on the person who's doing this. That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Wile E. Coyote, it sounds like. I like it. That's a really good one. Oh, I'm really hung up on the whole thing of, yes, I understand, Smitty, what you're saying about how wrong that is to be running around shooting people in the face, 100%. What I don't understand is how or where the police get to be basically putting a hit on someone else, someone completely innocent, and then have completely no responsibility for that, because that just feeds the fire kind of thing, and it creates that whole, to me, a lawless society. So,
and I find it really interesting because you're absolutely right, but you get this sort of sense that all of this crime is happening and all these gang guys are doing whatever they're doing, and probably the police are losing the fight a bit here. To go so hard on a person that you've got no evidence against, so one, or to do things where you're actually falsifying information to try and get someone to, I don't know, confess or whatever, it just smacks of some kind of incompetent desperation in this kind of policing that's happening here. And you just think, to what end are you trying to do this? Are you trying to put these guys away? Or are you just randomly kind of, firing blanks at anyone who looks, and I suspect race has quite a lot to do with this.
Correct.
Latino.
We've seen that before. Remember we did the camouflage assassin, and that was probably similar in some ways. What shocks me is that they've actually named the supposed informant, who actually wasn't at all, that's led to her getting killed, and they have no care for being responsible for that. And that's what gets me, and I don't know from that what's
even worse is she was cooperating with them.
100%.
To your point about no one's ever going to help you, this girl was actually cooperating with you and giving testimony, and you let her get killed. Oh, you not only let her get killed, you pointed a finger at her.
Totally set up. Yeah.
Maybe Deputy City Attorney Elizabeth Fitzgerald, who thinks that they haven't done anything wrong, needs to go to, what was the prison, Swanny, the maximum security one?
Supermax.
Oh, sorry. Supermax. Sorry. Yeah, that's
I don't know,
it. Yeah,
so Supermax.
Maybe that's where she needs to go for no reason.
Just within the Supermax,
Elaine Page Supermax.
Elaine Page Supermax. That'll do just fine.
I can't remember, but there was an Elaine Page prison somewhere. Yeah, Elaine Page.
Yeah, and
shout out Elaine Page.
And I don't want anyone to die as a result of her actions, because we've had enough of that. But I can't understand that how she thinks it's appropriate to not be horrified by that and to not go, my God, that kind of technique is something that we should never ever use. So I think let's just send her to Supermax for 20 years for no reason without justifying it, and get her to prove she didn't do it. Do what exactly?
Yeah.
Like you did.
Yeah.
Where's your proof though? But proof of what? Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like it's just it's so bad, and she's at the heart of that problem. Not to mention the detective or the policeman who did it in the first place, but she's defending that naughty Swanny.
I wanted to sort of, I don't want to do anything particularly violent, but what I wanted to try and, replicate was I wanted the detectives to understand that, actions have consequences. So when they start by, faking someone's signature or whatever else and putting a target on someone's head, that doesn't get removed. Those things don't happen. It's there and it's for good. And, I would like them to have that idea of that sense of foreboding, which was like, oh my God, I'm a marked person. I'm wanted. That's that fear. That would be a really, you've done that. I wouldn't say flippantly, but they didn't really have any real thought for those people's lives, did they, when they were doing that stuff to Martha?
Yeah.
None at all.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a means to an end to get to someone else. And, having seen the officers who were involved, one of them was Hispanic, Rodriguez, and the other guy, like, I've seen them ask point blank if they did the wrong thing, and they had admitted, and they were very sort of like, like they weren't even arguing the fact they had done the wrong thing. It was just sort of like, yeah, I did, I did the wrong thing, It was.
I wonder if that reaction is because we can't take it back, and
where it's done now. Totally.
There's nothing we can do about it. And yes, we did. All we can say is yes, we did do the wrong thing.
Yeah, it wasn't like that. I'm not saying that they were saying sorry. It was just this idea of they were just resigned to it. Yeah, that's what we've done. Just that idea of being hunted, or because you would be in gangland. You know what I mean? That's exactly the kind of thing you get taken out for, and they know that. It's not like it's someone going, "Oh, I didn't know that that would be the outcome." They've got to have known exactly what the outcome would have been, right?
Yeah.
Unless they were, if they shouldn't have been on those kind of cases. It just doesn't add up to me. It's just amateur hour, people having a little bit of a go. It's like, oh, what about this person? Oh, he's got the same surname as well. Yes. Yeah. Defective detective work again.
That's massively, isn't it?
I maybe it was an introductory paragraph of one of the articles I read of somewhere, but it was, there are a lot of people in the system who shouldn't be there or haven't done the crimes that they've been told they've done it. And there are some that are dead. I just find that terrifying, right? That it's not enough to be innocent. Sometimes you have to be innocent and lucky. That is terrifying. Because we know that from all the crimes that we look at, we don't always have all the right proof at the right time. Sometimes you do need to have a bit of luck on your side.
Yeah.
And there's literally no evidence. Isn't it funny? Like, that whole thing, and Schmidt, you touched on it earlier, and Swanny, you were just then, that, the innocent until proven guilty. But where's the proof? Who's actually gone and tried to find any evidence that, this bloke was guilty? That
I can't believe it was even going to prosecution. I can't believe it
crazy,
got that far.
Isn't it?
There was nothing. Like, what were you basing? And, Swanny said that.
And yet he's in Superman.
What was her name? Silverman or whatever name.
Yeah, the
sniper.
Sniper.
Beth Silverman, sniper. Yeah.
Yeah. She clearly thought that whiff of whatever was quite enough to put this guy away. And is she relying on prejudice? Yeah.
The judge who she is in the long shot in it's only 40 minutes. That's a snapshot sort of documentary. It's not a lot of
snapshot of the long shot. Yeah.
Snapshot of the long shot. Yeah. She speaks at one point and she said, I just kind of had this feeling that I wanted to take she took home the initial interviews with the detective. She took them home. She said, I watched them time and time and time again. She said, I even had my kids watch them with me. She said, I just had this feeling. She said, I just thought this is an innocent man. The way he was responding to different things. She said, I just couldn't see how that would possibly, I could put him in front of a jury. And then, she was the one who ended up sort of kicking it out of court. But, if you had somebody else who went, I don't like what he looks like, or I don't like this, I think things could have gone another way.
Well, frankly, I just don't care. Next.
Yeah. You were you're in jail when you were younger, you were involved in something.
And
your brother's an absolute ratbag, you're part of that gang.
Yeah. Whatever, you're out.
Yeah.
I mean, I could investigate it, but it'd take a lot of my time.
I could, but I won't.
I don't want to waste my time. Yeah. There we go.
Well, that was a good one, Swanny. Well done.
Yeah, nice one.
Frustrating, but I am happy for Juan and his family that justice did prevail on this occasion. Well, as we say every week, miss you already.
Ciao, darling.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.